Running on the trail, she sees a dog dragging a bag. What she finds inside is shocking. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It's always awesome to see how far our stories are reaching. Emily Harper, her blonde ponytail tied loosely and earbuds dangling around her neck, jogged at a steady pace, breathing in the crisp morning air like it could wash away old pain. A sign language teacher, Emily had learned to read the world through senses beyond sound. Each step she took was part routine, part release, a private ritual in a world that didn't always get her. But that morning, something shifted. In the distance, barely visible through the brush, a shape dragged itself along the dirt. At first, she thought it was an injured deer, but as she got closer, her breath caught. A German shepherd, her coat dirty and ribs showing, tugged at a black sack with her teeth, far too big for her frail body. Each step was a struggle, a fight against exhaustion and pain. Her clear, bright eyes locked onto Emily with a silent plea that hit her deep in her core. "What?" Emily whispered, kneeling slowly. The sack twitched. Inside were 3 tiny puppies, eyes still closed, trembling bodies gasping for air. They were alive, just barely. The dog didn't growl. She didn't back away. She just watched. A tear slid down Emily's cheek, struck by the fierce strength and quiet surrender in this mother's gaze. Then she saw the wounds, dark bruises across the dog's body, an open gash on her side and on her back leg, a horrific mark seared into her skin, the letter R, burned with a branding iron. "Who did this to you?" Emily murmured, her voice breaking. Shaking, she pulled out her phone, but out here in the woods there was no signal. She slipped off her jacket and wrapped the puppies in it. She couldn't leave them. She wouldn't. And then, as if sensing safety, the dog collapsed at her feet. "Max, Max, come here!" From the end of the trail, trotting with grizzled dignity, came her old friend, a sturdy German shepherd with graying fur, wise eyes, and a warrior's soul. Max, her retired guide dog, didn't need commands. He approached, sniffed the puppies, then the mother. With a gentle lick on the wounded dog's muzzle, he seemed to urge her to keep going. Emily looked up at the sky. "I don't know who you are or where you came from, but I promise you're not alone." It wasn't a casual promise, not for someone like Emily. Years ago, she'd lost her younger sister to violence. Since then, she'd vowed never to ignore a cry for help, even if it came from animal eyes. With effort, she tucked the puppies into her backpack, making a warm nest. She called Max, who stood by the injured dog. The mother, wobbling, followed him. Together, they headed back toward town. 3 tiny lives now depended on them. And Emily, how, without knowing it yet, had just opened a door that would pull her into dark secrets, lasting scars, and a past that doesn't forgive. Emily drove her silver SUV back toward town, her heart pounding. The tires crunched over wet gravel as clouds gathered overhead, mirroring her urgency. In the back seat, the 3 puppies rested in a box lined with makeshift thermal blankets. Tiny, fragile, they barely breathed, clinging to life by instinct more than strength. Beside them, Luna lay quiet on an old towel, panting softly. Her muzzle trembled with fever, and the metallic smell of blood filled the air with raw intensity. Max, sprawled on the floorboard, kept his eyes on her. He was alert, as if sensing something unseen trailing them, something distance couldn't stop. "Hold on, Luna, please hold on," Emily whispered, speeding around the final curve into Willow Creek. The Greenhaven Veterinary Clinic was a modest building with a sky-blue front, known for its unwavering dedication. Emily leapt out, barely turning off the engine, shouting for help. "Dr. Bennett, I need help now." Dr. Sarah Bennett emerged from the double doors, a woman in her mid-40s, slim with brown hair in a tight bun, her hands steady and eyes sharp, yet kind. Sarah didn't waste time with questions. Her gaze landed on the R branded on Luna's leg, and her face paled. "Room 3. Right now." Within minutes, the medical team sprang into action. While an assistant gave Luna mild sedatives, another checked the puppies. Sarah monitored vital signs, assessing pain with practiced care. When she opened one puppy's mouth to check its breathing, she frowned. "There's wire here in its throat." Her voice wavered for a moment. "And this?" She leaned over Luna's back and wiped with a cloth. "This isn't mud. It's industrial chemical residue." Emily, standing by the metal table, felt a chill run down her spine. "What does that mean?" Sarah stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then she walked to a wall cabinet and pulled out a dusty folder. Inside was a police report. Years ago, there was an undercover operation, a network of illegal breeders north of Fairview County. Many animals were found dead, some branded with hot iron, like livestock. She placed the report beside Luna's body. This mark, it's the same. Emily felt something inside her crack, not from horror but from a resolve starting to burn like fire. She's not just a victim, she survived. And whatever happened to her, it's not over. Sarah nodded silently. We can stabilize her. She'll need minor surgery and strong antibiotics. The puppies, they have a chance. It's a miracle they're still breathing. Emily stepped toward the makeshift kennel where the puppies slept. One stirred, letting out a faint whimper. Max approached gently, sniffed the air and licked the forehead of one. I knew it, Emily murmured, stroking Max's back. I knew I wouldn't find them alone. That night, Emily slept in a chair at the clinic, refusing to leave. Max curled up at her feet, like in the old days. Luna, in the next room, sedated but stable, became the symbol of something bigger, something without a name yet, but already changing lives. And in the dim light of the operating room, the R scarred on her skin glowed like a vow. This story wouldn't stay buried. Emily woke to soft dawn light filtering through the waiting room window. A gentle snore at her feet showed Max hadn't moved all night. Outside, the rain had stopped, but a thick fog cloaked the world, as if nature itself was hiding what was coming. Dr. Bennett appeared at the door with a steaming coffee mug and a measured look. Luna made it through the night. She's weak, but her fever's down. I let you sleep, but you'll want to see this. Emily stood, her muscles stiff, but her mind buzzing with instinct. Sarah led her to a small back room at the clinic. On a metal table sat a tray of items pulled from the puppies' bodies, 2 twisted wire fragments, a syringe with oily residue, and a torn piece of leather with a partially burned number, 472C. I found this in the sack, Sarah said, almost whispering. Someone tried to destroy any trace. But this number, it looks like part of a record. Emily studied the fragment, eyes narrowing. What if it's tied to an illegal breeder? Sarah nodded, but her look hinted at more than suspicion. She went back to the cabinet and pulled out another thin, dusty file. Inside was a photo. Stacked cages in an abandoned farm, dogs in wretched conditions. In one corner, a blurry image of a German shepherd with the same scar on its leg. 7 years ago, Operation Shadow Rescue. Sarah's voice grew heavy. Police shut down a farm north of Fairview County. Many animals were put down due to irreversible conditions, but some escaped. One looked just like Luna, though the report says it died in transport. Emily froze. The silence felt like lead. An idea took root. If Luna survived, who else did? Hours later at home, Emily set up a makeshift space in her study. Blankets, heat lamps, special food. Luna, now with a fresh bandage on her side, settled near the puppies. Max watched them with calm protection. Emily looked at the scene, torn between tenderness and fear. Something didn't add up. Determined, she returned to where she'd found Luna. The sky was clear now, but the ground still damp from rain. Max led the way, nose sharp. He stopped suddenly at a fence covered in ivy, sniffing hard. Emily pushed the vines aside and saw it. Dried blood, clumps of fur, claw marks. Nearby, a thin mud trail led to a hidden path among the pines. What's that, Max? The dog moved forward, more alert than ever. Emily followed the path, winding through tall, ancient trees to a forgotten structure, a crumbling rural cabin, swallowed by vines. The windows were broken, the door hanging on a rusted hinge. Emily swallowed hard. The air smelled of mold, but also fear. She pushed the door. Inside, a heavy silence wrapped around her. Blackened walls, empty shelves, a rusted cage in the corner. On the floor, old collars, broken muzzles, torn papers. She picked one up. It was a vaccination form, with the same number, 472C. At the bottom, a name, Ryan M. Her pulse raced. Now she had a name. A faceless figure, but a real presence. Someone had been here. Someone who thought Luna was no longer a threat. And they were wrong. Emily stepped out slowly, paper in hand, and looked at Max. We're not sitting this one out. Behind her, the wind blew hard, slamming the door shut. The earth had spoken, and the past had just woken up. Night fell over Willow Creek like a heavy blanket. No stars, no moon. Emily sat by the unlit fireplace, Papers from the cabin spread across the table. Every scrap, every number, every initial seemed to whisper something unfinished. Luna slept near the puppies, who were starting to wiggle with a bit more strength. Max, ever watchful, stayed by the front door. Since their trip to the woods, he kept sniffing the air like he sensed a formless threat. Emily had spent hours digging through old forums, public records, forgotten police notes. Everything pointed to a name no one dared say out loud: Ryan Mitchell, a ghost with enough money to leave no trace and enough cruelty to brand animals with fire. Then, around 11, the doorbell rang. Emily tensed. She grabbed a flashlight, peered through the peephole. Nothing. But when she opened the door, she found a hunched figure on the porch, soaked from steady rain, shaking without comfort. "Who?" "Don't yell," the girl said, voice barely audible. "I'm not here to hurt you. My name's Rachel. I know who Luna is." Emily felt a chill crawl up her spine. She opened the door wide. Rachel looked about 16, pale skin, tangled light brown hair, green eyes dulled by fear. Her hands shook as she clutched a worn, stained school notebook. "How do you know her name?" I gave it to her." Emily let her in without another word. She grabbed a blanket, offered a mug of hot tea. Rachel sat on the couch, avoiding eye contact. Her gaze flicked from the puppies to Luna, then to Max, who stayed close but not hostile. "I was at that farm," she murmured. "My mom worked for him, for Ryan. When she died, they made me stay. I had nowhere to go." Emily listened, not interrupting. Rachel spoke in a flat tone, like she was reciting something she'd rehearsed in her head 1,000 times. "He bred dogs, not for love, for money. Some were for fighting, others to sell overseas. The ones that didn't make the cut, he killed. Luna was one of his best breeders. He wanted her to have litters every 2 months. They injected her with stuff I had to mix. I don't know what it was. I just did what I was told." The girl's hands gripped the mug tight. Luna escaped twice. The first time they found her with a drone. The second was different. She'd just given birth. He let the Rottweilers loose. They attacked her in front of me. He thought she was dead. He stuffed her in a sack with the puppies and told me to take it to the woods and bury it. A tear slid down her cheek, but her voice didn't waver. "I didn't do it. I left her there with the sack open. I couldn't kill her. I ran away that night. I've been sleeping in bus stations, abandoned schools, but I saw her picture online, Luna. Someone posted about her. I recognized the scar." Emily didn't know what to say. Rachel opened the notebook. Inside were drawings, rough sketches of the breeding farm, dog names, strange symbols by the cages. On one page, scrawled in a hurry, was the word Apex, circled in red. "What's this?" Emily asked. "It's the name he used to ship the dogs. Trucks labeled like they carried cattle feed. And Apex was one of the secret sheds, in the hills near Brookside." Emily leaned closer. "Do you know if Ryan's still there?" Rachel looked down. The silence stretched for seconds. "He knows Luna's alive. Someone called him. Said a woman took her to a clinic. That's why I came. You're not safe here." Just then, a loud thud at the front window shattered the quiet. Emily and Rachel froze. Max barked fiercely, charging toward the door. Emily, heart pounding like a war drum, ran to close the blinds. On the ground outside, a folded paper. Emily picked it up carefully, her stomach twisting. It read, "You don't know who you're messing with." The night, already scarred by the threatening note left at the window, brought no rest. Inside the house, the air felt thick, almost suffocating. Emily reinforced the locks and turned off all the lights, leaving just a dim lamp glowing in the kitchen. Rachel, exhausted, slept on the couch, clutching her notebook like a shield. Max patrolled every corner with quiet unease, more alert than ever. Outside, the rain returned like a warning, hammering the roof with the steady beat of a distant war drum. It was 3:14 a.m. when Max let out a sharp bark, short and firm, like a command. Emily jolted upright. She grabbed the flashlight and the baseball bat she'd kept behind the fridge since her days in Baltimore. She crept to the living room window. Nothing at first. Then she saw the fence in her yard, one board broken. Beyond it, in the wet mud, a fresh boot print, its edges still sharp. She woke Rachel gently. "Wake up. We're not alone." Rachel snapped alert, her eyes already trained by fear. She grabbed her backpack and stood. Emily dialed the local police, hands shaking. The officer who answered, Laura Carter, promised to send a patrol. But Emily knew Willow Creek moved slowly in the early hours. They'd be on their own for at least half an hour. Max stood rigid by the back door, his ears perked. A low growl rumbled in his throat. Then the kitchen window shattered. "Get down!" Emily yelled, shielding Rachel with her body. Something landed inside, a bottle with a soaked rag. But it didn't catch fire. It was a threat. Chemical. The smell spread fast. Gasoline. Emily, with Max at her side, ran to the backyard and turned on the garden sprinklers. It was a desperate move, but it worked. The liquid diluted before it could ignite. Luna, stirred by the chaos, began to whimper. The puppies cried, hungry and scared. Emily rushed back inside. "Upstairs, to the attic!" They climbed the stairs fast. Emily blocked the attic hatch with an old wooden chest. Max stayed in position, like in his K9 unit days. Rachel stared at the floor, as if she could see through the walls. "It was him. I told you. He knows where we are." "No." Emily clenched her teeth. "He's playing. He wants us scared. And he's winning. He's got the power to vanish. No one looks for him because no one wants to find him." Emily thought of Luna's eyes, the scar still visible, the papers from the farm. This man wasn't just an animal abuser. There was more. Something deeper, more organized. Maybe a network, maybe buyers, maybe accomplices. The patrol arrived at 3:49. Late. They found the broken fence, the boot print, the shattered glass, and the lingering gasoline smell. They took statements, photos, but their eyes showed it. Doubt. Like they didn't want to admit something so dark could grow in their small, safe town. Officer Carter looked at Emily as she left. "Stay sharp. This isn't just about rescued animals anymore. It's bigger." Emily locked the door after they left. Silence settled back in like an unwelcome guest. She went to Luna. The dog met her gaze with wet, knowing eyes, as if she understood the weight of what had just happened. "He won't silence us," Emily whispered, stroking her head. "Not this time." Rachel stepped up behind her. "What if we leave, go to another state? He won't stop." "No," Emily said firmly. "This ends here. It started here, and it's going to finish here." Emily drove in silence down a back road toward Cedar Hills, hands steady on the wheel, eyes fixed on the cloudy horizon. Beside her, Rachel dozed, wrapped in a blanket, while Max, sprawled in the back seat, kept watch out the window. On the passenger seat, a portfolio secured with rubber bands held everything they'd gathered: the number 472C, Rachel's notebook, the photo of the abandoned farm, and the chemical traces found on Luna. Emily had a meeting, not with the police. She didn't fully trust them anymore, but with someone who knew the system's rotten layers. Dr. Sarah Bennett, a vet, yes, but also the daughter of a retired federal judge with access to sealed records. The building where Sarah agreed to meet was an old decommissioned law library used by former professionals for private research. When Emily walked in, portfolio under her arm, Sarah was already at an oak table, surrounded by stacked folders and books thick as bricks. "You're right on time," Sarah said without looking up. "I dug into Operation Shadow Rescue. Officially, it closed in 2018, no solid convictions. Most testimonies were thrown out for lack of evidence. But I found something that chilled me." She opened a red folder and slid a set of yellowed, photocopied pages toward Emily. During the operation, 3 farms were linked to one name. Not Ryan Mitchell, as we thought. His older brother, Edward Mitchell, a pharmaceutical businessman who died under strange circumstances a year after the operation. Emily raised her eyebrows. "And how's that connected to Ryan?" Sarah showed an old, faded photo. 2 men stood by caged dogs. One was Edward. The other, younger with a piercing stare, was Ryan. They called him the apprentice. Edward got him into animal genetic modification. They tested chemicals to boost muscle growth in specific breeds. That's the odd smell on Luna. That's why the metal fragments in the puppies. Emily felt sick. She'd thought it was standard illegal breeding, but this was different. "This is covert biotech," she murmured. "Systematic cruelty for profit." Sarah nodded, but she wasn't done. "I also found reports of missing women in rural areas near the farms. Young, often with no registered family, some listed as maids, nannies, farmhands." Rachel, who'd been quiet by the entrance, stepped forward. "They weren't workers. They were property." Sarah looked at her, throat tight. Emily moved closer to the girl. "You saw them?" Rachel nodded. "Some were brought from other states, promised jobs, ended up locked away. One, her name was Hannah. She had a white dog. When she tried to escape with it, Edward ordered her taken to Level B. I didn't know what it meant until I went back that night. She was gone. Emily's heart sank. There was something bigger, more structured, more untouchable than a single illegal farm. A system built to hide pain, suffering, and death under the guise of empty fields and dusty barns. Sarah stood and went to an old file cabinet. She pulled out a sealed box and set it on the table with a thud. This never made it to the police. My dad kept unofficial copies of dismissed testimonies. Some mention a hidden refuge in the hills near Maplewood Forest. They called it the Vault. One witness said that's where they took the most aggressive animals and the girls who caused trouble. Rachel stepped back. I was there once. It was a tunnel underground, cold, always smelled like metal and smoke. Emily felt the truth's weight crushing her, but she wouldn't back down. Not now. We have to go. With evidence, cameras, whatever it takes. What if he's there? Rachel asked, trembling. Then we'll finally look him in the eyes. Dawn barely hinted at its arrival when Emily parked the truck at the edge of Maplewood Forest. The high branches formed a canopy that hid the sky, and fog drifted among the trees like a damp, ghostly veil. This was a place absent from modern maps, a space forgotten by choice, consumed by the silence of those who chose not to remember. Beside her, Rachel flipped through her notebook for the 100th time. Her fingers traced a hand-drawn line, marking a back path through pines, labeled with a nearly faded B. Max, lying in the back, sniffed the air restlessly. Emily slung her backpack over her shoulders. Flashlight, camera, extra batteries, water, a pistol inherited from her grandfather, never thought she'd need it, and a digital recorder. Sarah arrived minutes later in her old sedan. She wore hiking gear, an outdated bulletproof vest that looked like a movie prop, and a determined expression. The entrance should be near a dried-up spring, Rachel explained, stepping out, behind a rock shaped like a half moon. You only see it when the sun hits at the right angle. And how'd you find it? Sarah asked. I didn't. They pushed me. They trekked for over 30 minutes. With each step, the forest closed tighter, like it was swallowing the path behind them. Sounds were rare. No birds, no animals, just their breathing. When the sun's first rays broke through the leaves, a stone shape appeared between two twisted trees, the half-moon rock. Behind it, buried under dry leaves and moss, a rusted iron hatch rose from the ground. Sarah knelt, cleared the debris, and lifted the lid with effort. A whiff of damp and rust escaped like an ancient sigh. Max growled low, ears stiff. Emily switched on her flashlight. They descended a narrow concrete staircase. Their footsteps echoed too long, as if the walls breathed in secret. At the bottom, a tight hallway lined with exposed metal pipes stretched out, with locked, rusted doors on both sides. This is it, Rachel whispered. I remember fewer doors, but maybe it was another level. One door was ajar. Emily pushed it with her flashlight's barrel. Inside, cages, small, rusted, coated in dried fur and brown stains on the floor. In the corner, a makeshift surgical table, empty vials, torn labels. The silence was so thick it hurt. This wasn't a breeder, it was a lab, Sarah said, scanning a corkboard with barely readable notes. They were experimenting, testing genetic combos. In another room, they found overturned metal cabinets, trampled papers, photos. One showed a German shepherd, visibly altered, eyes red from the flash, body unnaturally muscled. On the back, in all caps, Proto 5L. Luna, Emily whispered, clutching the photo to her chest. This was part of her story. There's more down there, Rachel said, pointing to a side hallway partly collapsed. That's where the girls' room was, if it's still there. Emily followed without hesitation. They stepped over rubble and rotted wood. The final door was rusted, but gave way after a hard shove. Inside, a windowless room, a single mattress on the floor, scratches on the walls, names, Hannah, Lily, Grace, and among them, carved with fingernails, nearly invisible in the light. We are not animals. Emily dropped to her knees. Silent tears streamed down her face. They fought too, and no one listened. Rachel stepped closer, voice breaking. I told them stories, in secret. I said someone would come for us. I never thought it'd be you. Then, a dull thud echoed through the tunnel. A door at the far end slammed shut. The air shifted, heavier, more threatening. Sarah switched off her flashlight and pressed a finger to her lips. Footsteps, slow, dragging, and a voice. "You thought you could come here and walk away?" Emily's blood froze. Rachel backed into the wall. Max, though old, tensed, ready to protect. The voice spoke again, closer, lower. Some stories need to stay underground, but it was too late. The story had woken, and this time someone would answer for every name on those walls. The voice's echo lingered on the damp walls like an ancient curse. Emily held her breath, her pulse hammering in her ears. Sarah aimed a tactical flashlight down the hallway, where the darkness seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Max stepped forward, fur bristling, teeth bared, a deep growl rising from his core. "Don't make a sound," Emily whispered to Rachel, who trembled against the wall, face pale, eyes wide as saucers. The footsteps stopped. For a moment, silence reclaimed the space. Then a figure emerged from the shadows, tall, thin, wrapped in a mud-stained black leather jacket. Dark blonde hair, wet with sweat, fell over cold, calculating eyes. In his right hand, a metal cane. In his left, a flashlight he aimed straight at Emily's face. Well, the deaf teacher. Didn't think you had this much guts. Emily knew him instantly. Though she'd never seen him in person, she'd pieced him together from documents, old photos, broken testimonies. Ryan Mitchell. "And you don't seem as smart as they said," she shot back, standing still. "You're done." He smiled. An empty, twisted smile, shaped by years of getting away with it. Know how many times I've heard that and how many are still alive to say it again? Ryan twirled the cane and rested it on the ground. His gaze shifted to Rachel. "Oh, the little traitor. I warned you, didn't I? But you always loved your fairy tales. That someone would come, that there'd be justice. And what do you have now? A teacher with a flashlight? An old dog?" Max growled louder and took 2 steps forward. Emily stopped him with a hand signal, eyes locked on the man. "This ends today, Ryan," Sarah said from behind. "Everything's documented. The papers, the testimonies, the files. You can't bury it anymore." Ryan let out a hoarse laugh, like he'd heard a bad joke. "Files? You think that's enough? Know how many times I've burned evidence like that? Silencing is even easier." Then, with a quick move, he pulled a small remote from his jacket. He raised it with slow, theatrical flair. "See this? One signal, and this place turns to rubble, cages, tunnels, everything, including you." Sarah aimed her flashlight straight into his eyes. "Do it, and they'll know it was you. Your face is recorded, your voice too." Ryan blinked. For a split second, he faltered. Emily seized the moment. She lunged, striking his wrist with her flashlight. The remote clattered to the concrete. Max leaped, sinking his teeth into the man's leg. "Now, Rachel!" Emily shouted. "Tell me in the comments, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this story so far? Your opinion means a lot to me." The girl darted for the remote, grabbed it and tossed it to Sarah. But Ryan, injured and enraged, broke free from Max and shoved Emily against the wall with force. His eyes burned with rage and fanaticism. "You don't get it. I was improving them. I made them perfect." "You destroyed them," Emily yelled, fighting back. "You killed what you couldn't control." Ryan raised the cane to strike, but a gunshot cracked through the air. His body staggered, then dropped to his knees. Sarah, arm steady, held the pistol from her vest. Her face showed no emotion, just icy calm. Ryan slumped to the side, breathing hard, still alive. Max positioned himself in front of Emily, shielding her. "We'll call the police," Sarah said. "We're not killing you. You'll face this, every name, every animal, every cage, every girl." Rachel stepped forward, eyes wet but back straight. "You'll never touch anyone again." Her words hung in the basement air as sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Emily, hands shaking, sank beside Max, stroking his head, grateful for his silent courage. Ryan Mitchell didn't die that night, but everything he'd built in the shadows was dragged into the light, and underground, amid concrete and rust, the screams of the unheard were finally heard. 6 months passed since that early morning in the Maplewood Forest tunnels. The story of Luna, Emily, Rachel, and Max became a symbol of justice across the state. It wasn't just an animal rescue case. It cracked open a wound buried for years in a community that had chosen to look away. Ryan Mitchell faced a public trial that drew reporters from everywhere. The court found him guilty on multiple charges: aggravated animal cruelty, interstate species trafficking, kidnapping minors, and illegal veterinary experimentation. Despite his attempts to fake insanity, the evidence, videos recovered from his own files, was undeniable. He was sentenced to life without parole. During the trial, Rachel testified with a steady voice, no longer afraid. Her words moved the jury and the thousands watching on TV. Her face became a symbol of quiet resistance, and her story sparked a support network for young victims of systemic abuse. Sarah Bennett briefly returned to public life to work with a state task force reviewing neglected trafficking and animal abuse cases. Her efforts reopened over 20 investigations. Then she slipped back to her quiet life, though she never stopped visiting Emily on Sundays, always with treats for Max. Emily turned her Willow Creek home into the seed of Luna's Haven, a recovery, care, and adoption center for dogs rescued from extreme situations. With donations, volunteers, and supportive vets, it grew fast. Every visitor was greeted by Luna, now healthy, her gaze calm, a survivor who'd faced the dark and won. The 3 surviving puppies, Buddy, Daisy, and Scout, found loving homes but often returned to the Haven to visit their mother. Max, the old warrior, became a living legend there. Though his aging body craved rest, his spirit stayed vigilant, and no puppy slept without feeling his protective nudge. Rachel, after months of therapy and private lessons with Emily, earned a full veterinary scholarship to a school in Portland. Before leaving, she left a message carved on a wooden plaque at the Haven. "We are not animals, we are survivors, and now we are a beacon for others." Emily, reading it one spring morning, smiled through misty eyes. She knew her life had changed forever, and though the scars would never fully fade, they now told a different story, one of resilience, courage, and love. The story of Luna, the story of us all. Thank you so much for sticking with this story until the end. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a ton and motivates us to keep bringing new stories every week. And since you're here, take a moment to check out another one of our stories that's popping up on your screen. Big hug and see you next time. Stay well.